What is the most horrific thing that someone has told you super casually? Almost messed up the word horrific there, but let's get into this. I was driving my brother's friend somewhere and he decided to tell me that when he was in grade school, he came home one day to find that his dad had committed suicide by shooting himself in the head with a shotgun. Bro's friend didn't know what to do, so he just climbed onto his dad's lap and sat there looking at him until his grandma showed up 4 hours later. I'd only met him once before and he told me this story unprompted. I didn't know how to respond other than to say how sorry I was. That is one of the saddest things I have ever read. Coach bus driver was like, "Sorry, the bus was late guys. The traffic was caused by someone who committed suicide by walking into traffic." Looks at one of the passengers getting off the bus. "You remember the blood skid marks, right?" All of us who were waiting at the bus station were like, what the f***? Guy said it like he sees it every day or something. When you drive for a living, you could see the rapture and you just get pissed at all the abandoned cars on the road. Traffic would be a lot better though. I was on a date with this girl and we drove by a fast food joint and a shared parking lot. She deadpan said, "My mum used to park here and shoot heroin with her boyfriend while me and my brother sat in the back seat." Me. "Oh, wow. I was a heroin baby. My mom was using while she was pregnant." Me. "Oh." That is really sad, but it does happen. I went to uni with a guy who had to detox immediately after being born, poor thing. But he turned out freakishly well actually. When he first told me I thought he was joking. He was a star student, A's and first. Something in him had said, "I will never be such a real happy success story. Dan, I have no idea where you are, but I'm sure you're killing it." I called my cousin, and at the beginning of the convo, I asked what she was doing. She said, "Oh, just standing at the counter looking at my hand." I thought it was a little weird, but my cousin is a little weird, so I forgot about it. Anyway, half an hour later she goes, "The blood has now stained my shirt. I think I should hang up and go to the ER." I was like, "What?" So she replied, "Oh, I stabbed myself with a meat cleaver 10 minutes before you called, and the knife is still in my hand. I'm fine, but my shirt is now ruined." Shock is a hell of a drug. I cracked my skull open and lost like 2 to 3 pints when a fellow scout threw a tree at my head. Don't ask. And all I felt was sudden wetness, and I'm like, yeah, I should probably tell an adult, huh? That he was going to prison for burning down a church. I had seen this guy about 10 times since the supposed accident. We were all hanging out and he said, "Guess what?" And that was that. This happened in South Texas for anyone wondering, and I'll add that he tried to gouge his girlfriend's eyes out, burned down her house and killed her 2 dogs. This guy had never raised his voice once. This was seriously out of left field. This man really said, "Guess what?" to let you know he was going to prison for arson. Chicken butt, haha. No, I'm playing, I just burned down a church. See you in a hot minute. A couple of years ago, I was on one of those music festival cruises. I was sitting down waiting on my friends to finish their drinks and whatnot when this lady sits down next to me. Somehow we get to talking about dogs. I tell her about mine. She tells me that hers is a comfort dog. I didn't ask her to elaborate because it wasn't any of my business, but she just tells me it's because she didn't leave her house for 5 years. Again, I didn't ask why. She went on to tell me a perfect stranger who'd been talking to her for all of 5 minutes that her ex-boyfriend was stalking her and broke into her house, so she had to shoot him and kill him. I think people overshare with strangers specifically because they know they'll probably never see you again. I've let really deeply personal things slip in front of strangers, not anywhere close to the scale of things in this thread, and then afterward wondered why I did. I think it's a way to help come to terms with trauma. Super f***ed up if you're the listener though. Kinda surprised. When I talk to strangers I have a different name, go to university, I only have 2 siblings, and then practice my lying skills for the duration of the conversation. I don't want anyone to think I have any issues. When I was 20 something back in the 90s, I was sitting on the front steps of my condo waiting for my sister's husband to pick me up. Nice old fellow, a tenant of my building, sat down next to me. His first sentence he'd ever spoken to me was, "Did you hear they're taking my testicles off on Thursday?" I responded that I had not. He continued, "Yep, don't use them much anymore after the missus died." Mercifully, at that moment my brother-in-law drove up. For some reason this is my favourite. That's one hell of an opening chat-up line. Supervisor at work. "Dwayne had his baby yesterday." Me. "Oh great, boy or girl?" Supervisor. "Dead." Like, what the f***? Really? Poor guy and his wife had a stillborn. Yeah, that is sick. Like, who would actually introduce it like that? I once asked my grandfather, "How you doing, Grandpa?" And he said, "Not good, not good." I moved my bowels 3 times already today, went to the doctors, and they put a tube in my penis. Should I mention we were at a family funeral? Hey, you asked. Bet that's the last time he asked Grandpa how he was doing. In my institute, a couple of girls 16 laughed that they had thrown another girl over the bridge with her hair on fire, and that made the girl's father commit suicide. Nobody cared that they shouted it in class while laughing. There was even the teacher. What? I was joking with an acquaintance once, and he told me that he was going to move in a couple of months. We weren't really close enough for me to care, but I asked him why out of pure curiosity. In the same breath, without hesitation, he told me that he had been in the foster system all his life despite knowing his biological dad personally. His dad was some big businessman in New York City and didn't have the time to raise a son. He had been with 11 different families in 15 years, and in each one he prayed he get adopted. It never happened. The family that he was with at that moment told him they were thinking about adopting him, but changed their minds last minute. Now he's in a constant state of expecting to move because he just assumes that no one will ever want to adopt him. If you're reading this, I hope you're doing good, Michael. When I was in college, there was this guy who would hang around me sometimes that seemed just a little bit off. But he was nice and we both had similar interests, so we hung out. One day, after I hadn't seen him for weeks, he tells me it's because the police were interviewing him. He tells me this story. Him and his 2 friends were in the woods, shooting a .22 pistol. Friend 3 tries to fire and it doesn't go off. Friend 3 looks into the barrel to check the gun. The gun then goes off, firing the round in there, and then the next round, shooting him twice in the face. You read that correctly. 3 guys went into the woods with a .22 pistol, 2 walked out, and the third was shot twice in the face and died. Anyone who knows anything about guns knows this is basically impossible, but since Guy and friend 2 both had the same story and the cops had no way to prove otherwise, no charges were filed. I stopped hanging out with that guy forever. Really f***ed up story. What do you mean by being basically impossible? I'm genuinely curious. I'm guessing it's because the bullet can't fire twice when you've already fired the gun when you're dead. I'm just guessing. Quoting someone who said, "I have homicidal intrusive thoughts. They border on impulses and I often feel like I'm being pulled towards them. I walked out on a date in the middle of a movie because I couldn't stop thinking about strangling her." To be fair, we were at a mental hospital. Well, hey, good for them for walking out and seeking treatment. I hope they get the help they need to cope with it.